Greetings, Dr. Wolfula here to present a very important special audio presentation that your ears cannot dare unlisten to. Does that make sense? Oh, it doesn't matter. Listen to this.
Welcome to someone's favorite movie. I'm coming to you from the Pod Shack outside beautiful Bay City, Michigan. My name is Randy, and with me is a goblin of a different sort. His name is Tom Coe. What up, sir?
I suffer for my art, sir.
You do. I mean, no. Let's put it all on the table there. Our listeners are very important to us, and we frequently fall on the sword so they don't have to.
Yeah, you're welcome, listeners.
Yeah, you are welcome. This is someone's favorite movie, the movie podcast where we surmise that everybody's movie is someone's favorite, and we're kind of playing fast and loose with that concept this week because we're talking about
really a movie.
Not really a movie. It's Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark, a notorious, I would say, even infamous attempt at putting Spider-Man on a Broadway stage.
Now, I have to admit, I had never watched any footage of this show. It's been out there for years. I've seen, little thumbnails on YouTube. Never really had any desire to click play on them until today. And boy, did it live up to its reputation.
It sure did. I also watched it today. And if you're a Spider-Man fan, I don't know, go see Spider-Man No Way Home. How about that?
Oh, yeah. I still haven't seen that movie, but I guarantee you it's way better than this.
Yeah.
Though I am willing to bet that there are a lot of Spider-Man fans out there who will die on that hill defending this play.
Oh, I'm sure it's got many defenders, and I'm almost positive if you were one of the few that saw it while it was making its initial runs, you probably have fond memories of the spectacle. And that's basically what it is, right? A spectacle.
Yeah, it's basically a practical effects display.
Yes. I remember hearing about this in my 20s and thinking, boy, that's an awful idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, that's stupid. But what do I know? I'm just sitting in the basement of my home, ranting and raving on a podcast.
I was going to say, I'm not the one who is spending tens of millions of dollars on this production.
Sure.
But, I mean, how many injuries were associated with this production anyway?
There were quite a few. There was somebody got concussed, a couple of broken wrists. I think there was an actress got caught underneath some heavy equipment.
Jeez.
Maybe a foot or two was broken. And I can see why, because there are a lot of physical aspects to this play, this production.
Yeah, and I'm not beating around the bush. I fucking hated this.
Yeah,
but I have to admit the wire work and every once in a while some of the sets were really impressive.
The wire work is very impressive. There's scenes where the actor who played Spider-Man, he really looked like Spider-Man flipping around and swinging, and there's a whole battle at the end where Spider-Man is fighting the Green Goblin, and they're wire working right over the audience, and Spider-Man even lands in the aisle at one point. That would be awesome to see.
Yeah, I have a feeling, and I'm trying, I don't know. Yeah, I am trying to, shit on this, but I shouldn't, because I have a feeling that watching it on your television, no matter how big of a screen and how impressive your surround sound is, it's nothing compared to actually seeing it in person.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, near the end, the entire set seems to move and shift so that it looks like the Green Goblin is flying up a skyscraper, and there you can see little cars and stuff on the set below. You know, it's supposed to be a street. That looked pretty cool.
No, I did think that was impressive. I thought a lot of the LED displays behind the actors was pretty damn impressive. But as far as, you know, the story, the acting, the chemistry between the actors, I've seen better productions in grade schools.
Little history behind this. This was the brainchild of a man named Tony Adams, who was invested in Broadway. He was a big fan. He launched a media company called Hello Entertainment, and his plan was to take established pop culture properties and translate them to the stage. He met a man named David Garfinkel, who was an entertainment lawyer, and they both were trying to get a project off the ground called Star Trek Forever, which, yes, would have brought Star Trek to the stage. Near as I can tell, that never happened.
And the world is better for it.
Probably. Mr. Adams got sort of a reputation around town, and he had an acquaintance named Michael Parker, who also happened to be a licensor with Marvel. And Marvel was looking to capitalize on the success of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man in 2002. So they called Adams because they were already, for whatever reason, fielding offers from all over the world about putting Spider-Man on stage. I don't know why this was such a need and desire for so many, but wow.
That's because people forget just how big that first Spider-Man movie really was when it came out.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was back when superhero movies were not a huge deal. It wasn't.
Yeah, you were lucky if you got one every couple of years instead of every couple of weeks.
They always seemed to do pretty well, but it wasn't the phenomenon it was now. Everybody looked at them still with an eye roll, you know, and scoffed a little bit. Now you can get away with anything. Fucking Galactus is going to be in Marvel movies. That's crazy. Anyways, because everything seems to connect so amazingly in some people's lives, Tony Adams had become friends with a man named Paul McGinnis on the set of a movie called Deliverance.
Really?
Yeah. They were both assistants on that movie. And McGinnis happened to have quit his film career at some point in the 70s and managed a little band called U2.
Never heard of them.
Right? And you never would after this play.
No.
Ever again. And also by chance, Bono and The Edge were neighbors with acclaimed filmmaker Neil Jordan, who lived right down the street. And Neil Jordan was friends with a lady named Julie Taymor, who was the mind behind the multi-million-dollar success of putting The Lion King on stage. So it all came together perfectly, Tomko. Perfectly. Until it didn't.
In all fairness, there is a lot of talent behind this. And I'm sure they all had good intentions.
Everybody has good intentions, yeah.
They just kind of shit the bed.
It's true. Glenn Berger, who eventually came onto the project as a co-writer, wrote a little book called Song of Spider-Man. And it's all about his entire experience working on this show. He said in an interview with Geek's Guide to the Galaxy, the podcast, he said a New York Times reviewer said this was a show conceived in cynicism, and he couldn't be more wrong. It was conceived with a sort of naive idealism, and there were a lot of high spirits early on. And I didn't finish his book. I did read a good chunk of it. And from what I gathered, everybody was like super on board. They thought they were making an extreme work of art. Like they wanted this.
Really?
Yeah, they wanted this to be just transcendent, really.
Well, good for them, I guess.
Good for them. I mean, well, when you think about it, not many artists will go into a thing seeking to make crap, right?
Oh, no. No, like I said, their intentions were good, but they just kind of took it too far. They took everything in this thing too far.
Yeah. Because of the easy connection, Bono and the Edge were approached to do all the songs for this movie, despite the fact, I mean, obviously they were one of the biggest bands in the world at the time, if not the biggest, saving the world with the power of rock and roll. But they had never, and I repeat, never written anything for the stage.
In all honesty, why would they?
Exactly. You know? So why would they take on this project, right?
And why would the producers think it would be a good fit?
Because it was an easy connection, I guess. I don't know. Plus, it would be a lot of publicity.
And I'm not one of the people that just blindly hates U2 and Bono. I think they've got a really, really good greatest hits package.
Oh, exactly. I mean, yeah, you can shit on every band you want, but they all have a greatest hits thing that you'll bop your head to every now and then, given the right mood.
And when you look at some of the behaviors of, rock stars past and present, I hardly think that Bono ranks up there in the most hated.
No. He was trying to cure AIDS in Africa for crying out loud.
I mean, the dude's trying to help people. Yeah. Just let him be his own little Irish self.
Sweet little leprechaun he is. In an interview with USA Today, Bono said, "What's special is the very ordinariness of Peter Parker. It sounds odd to say, but Spider-Man is as important to the 21st century as the story of Ulysses was to the ancient Greeks. These are morality plays where luminous characters duke it out in ways very revealing of the nature of who we are."
And you know what? I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he isn't saying anything that is terribly original. There have been plenty of comparisons to superheroes and the gods of old, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong.
Shoot, read Super Gods by Grant Morrison.
Exactly.
That's an entire book devoted to that very idea.
Mm-hmm.
About the musical, Bono said, "It's like a graphic novel, but a three-dimensional one. I'm calling it a pop-up pop art opera because I'm pretentious." Which I sort of love.
Well, at least he's embracing it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to. You got to throw yourself wholeheartedly behind this, I would think.
Mm-hmm. And he actually hit one of the biggest problems right on the head. I'm somebody who fucking loves comic books.
Sure.
I've got thousands of them. I've got Batman and Superman tattoos. I very rarely go through a week without having some kind of superhero on my chest. But I'm willing to admit that there are things in that medium that just don't translate. Whether it is some of the more outlandish dialogue, the character designs, anything. It works on the page. It doesn't work on the stage and screen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason you've never seen Wolverine in full costume yet.
Exactly.
Not to say it won't happen, but nobody's figured out a great way to do it yet.
Now, I want to talk about the cast because I am not familiar with any of the actors.
Sure.
And I'm sure that they were following direction, but I just thought everybody was completely miscast.
Well, originally, so Julie Taymor worked on the movie Across the Universe. Are you familiar with this? Being a huge Beatles fan?
I am a huge Beatles fan, and I have never seen it because I didn't want to sit through a 2-hour YouTube video of Beatles covers.
Wow. That's a cynical take that only Tomco could provide you, ladies and gents.
You're welcome, listeners.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. However, that's fair, I suppose. Originally, the leads from that movie, Jim Sturgis and Evan Rachel Wood, were going to be cast as Peter Parker and Mary Jane. But they both dropped out, so that kind of poo-pooed that. The lead that eventually got it, Keanu Reeves, I believe his name is.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I switched that around because I'm a fool. Reeve Carney was the man that got it. He was in a band, and I don't know. He won over people.
Well, I mean, he made for a decent Peter Parker, but there was, I said it before, and I'm going to say it again, there was no chemistry between him and anybody else in this story.
No.
I didn't buy that he was in love with this little redheaded girl. I didn't really get the feeling that he was raised by this old man and woman. I didn't feel that he was constantly frustrated by his boss at work. I just didn't buy it.
I bought the girl in this as Mary Jane more than I bought Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. Is that wrong of me?
No. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
Yeah, and my opinion's right. Thank you, Tonko, for agreeing with me.
But I don't know. I think part of my problem is that I'm just one of those people who can't stand musicals.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. How much of a musical fan you are? Because I think I have a unique take on this because I was never a fan of musicals until the last 12 months, I would say.
Okay. I can think of a couple musicals that I like. The Blues Brothers.
Okay.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, that's a musical. Yeah. Although that's not what I was. Yeah, it is a musical. You are right. It's not necessarily what I was thinking, but yeah.
I like the songbook of Trey Parker.
Sure. Yeah.
And I have seen bootleg of Book of Mormon and enjoyed it quite immensely.
Okay. All right.
But this just takes it way, way overboard. I don't think there was a single minute of footage of dialogue in between songs.
There was not much, yeah. So I've never been a fan of musicals. Wife is, Poogie, my wife, whom I adore. And so this summer, we watched In the Heights, which was one of those deals where it was released by Warner Brothers, so it was on HBO Max like the same day. Mm. And we were just hanging out and we watched it. And this is by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who also did Hamilton. And I really liked it quite a bit. I was surprised because it's sort of a different sort of, urban rap sort of, I don't know. It really struck a chord with me. So then,
did they ever explain why all these people are constantly singing and dancing in the streets?
I mean, they're all obviously insane, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So then I watched Hamilton and I liked that quite a bit. And then on Netflix released this movie called Tick, Tick, Boom, starring Andrew Garfield, who was playing Jonathan Larson, who created the musical Rent.
Okay.
And it was mind-blowing. It made me fall in love with Andrew Garfield as an actor. And when I watched Spider-Man No Way Home, spoilers, Andrew Garfield's in it, I couldn't help but think that Jonathan Larson character was informing his take on Peter Parker in Spider-Man No Way Home. And it really worked for me. And then I watched Rent. So I've been steeped in musicals, and watching this and watching the choreography, listening to the songs, it was awful. The songs are bad.
Yeah, and I'm saying this as a casual non-hater of U2. I hated all of the music in this.
The beginning of the show is so awful. It's so slow moving and it's hard to get into.
Yes. I think the fatal flaw of this is the pacing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because once he gets bitten by that spider, it turned around for me for a little bit. There was a whole 15-minute stretch where I was really into it, and then it fell off for me. But when he's in his bedroom bouncing around and the wire work is going on, and he's singing the song. God, what was it called? Bouncing in my room, bouncing off the walls.
Yeah. Okay. And believe it or not, that actually does kind of sound like a U2 song.
That's my point. The very first song that sounds like a U2 song is the one I latched onto, and I was like, oh, that's a good song.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one, I think it's right after that, Rise Above, that was actually on the radio. It was a single that U2 released with Reeve Carney. And they went around promoting. You can still hear it on the radio, on like adult contemporary radio or whatever. It's a decent song too. Those are the two songs that sound most like U2, and those are the two songs that work the best in this production, I think.
Mm. But the problem is, when you have that many songs, you don't have enough room for story. You don't have enough room for character development. I think you could probably tell this story by chopping out the music and getting it over and done with in like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It is a super short story, but the runtime on this is 2 hours and 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's brutal. Oh, it's so brutal. As you mentioned before, 6 people were injured while working on this. Safety inspectors from the New York Department of Labor were called in to review scenes from the show, and they fined it $13,000 for safety violations.
Now, $13,000 to you and me, that's a lot. That would put a big chunk, a big dent in our yearly budgets. But didn't they spend at least $75 million on this thing?
They did, yeah. They did. They kept
$13,000 ain't shit.
They kept
compared to the rest of the money that they were losing.
Yeah, they kept hemorrhaging money. And this was something that was in the works for years, almost a decade. And nobody could get their shit together. That's the problem.
Well, didn't they have, oh God, what is it called? It's not dress rehearsals. It's where they're not quite ready to debut and they're still ironing out the kinks.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put it on hiatus, trying to rework the songbook and the script and all that. They debuted and it was trashed. Not only because of the safety hazards, but just because it's a bad story. And then they pulled it, completely reworked it again, and it's still shitty.
Yeah. Well, Glenn Berger said that their biggest blunder was, quote, we only had one workshop, and then we went into rehearsals for the Broadway run of that show.
Workshop. That's the word I was trying to think of.
They only did that once. And usually when you're doing a Broadway run, you do countless workshops before you even begin to rehearse for the run of the show. He said that Julie Taymor would bring up the film Titanic. There were all these cost overruns and scheduling overruns, and everyone was predicting doom for the movie. But James Cameron got it to work. If he could, why couldn't we? And then Julie Taymor, her original script was not met well by Marvel. Marvel was not appreciative of her original pass on the script. They found it too dark and too sexual. She latched on to this idea of Arachne being in this movie, who is from Greek mythology. She was the person that was turned into a spider. That's where spiders come from, blah, blah, blah. She read the first issue of Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis. And in that, Norman Osborn relates that myth, and that's what she latched onto. And she wanted Arachne to be a major character in this play. Despite having nothing to do with Spider-Man in the entire history of Spider-Man, she thought this was the way to go. And Arachne was really supposed to be a huge part of the show. And at one point, Arachne was talking to Norman Osborn, who was revealed to have a foot fetish. And he was overcome with ecstasy by her many, many feet.
God damn it. Now wish this part was played by Tarantino.
Right. So eventually Julie Taymor got fired.
Really?
So before the thing even was on stage, it was already tumultuous.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd be way more interested in a documentary about this play than ever watching this play again.
I can't believe that there hasn't been one, quite honestly.
Well, I mean, when you figure that they've got a documentary about an aborted Superman movie that Nicolas Cage was almost in, it only makes sense to make a documentary about this.
Mm-hmm. The amazing thing about this Spider-Man musical was that it made a lot of money. A lot of money, yeah. It's the 16th highest grossing show in Broadway history.
Well, at least it has a happy ending for somebody, I guess.
No, it had a $75 million capitalization. That's the money that investors put up.
Uh-oh.
And that typically totals $10 to $15 million for a Broadway musical. Plus, you add the weekly operating expenses exceeding $1 million.
Uh-oh.
The show needed to be just a runaway success to turn a profit, and it was not. Eventually, after it closed, when ticket sales finally started plummeting, thanks to, curiosity being satiated.
I was going to say, I'm wondering how many of those tickets were bought by people who were the same folks that go to NASCAR races hoping for a crash.
Yeah, I would bet quite a few of them. So eventually it ended up with a loss that reached close to $60 million, despite the fact that it was making money hand over fist. Just wasn't enough.
Wow. Well, you know what, DC? You can stick that in your cap. They might be outperforming you at the box office, but you still got that Superman play, and I know turned a profit.
Yeah, that's true. Good job, DC. You did something right.
Yay, DC.
Yay. Boy. So this movie, I keep wanting to call it a movie. This production, we mentioned a lot of the good things, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the few things that are good. There's not a lot of good things, I don't think.
No, this is one of the few times that I have sat down and watched something and actively hated the people on my screen. Not because they were evil or despicable, but because they were fucking annoying.
Yeah. One reason why the music might have been not that great. So according to the Song of Spider-Man, which I read, Bono and the Edge were working on their new album at the same time they were working on the songs for this. And they were so busy doing so many other things that eventually got to the point where they only had a month to write 20 songs for this play while they were working on their new album. And while Bono did all his humanitarian work and tried to raise 4 children. So they weren't all in, I guess you would say.
So you're saying they just phoned it in, and did they at least turn a profit?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm hoping that somebody has a happy ending.
Boy, you would think somebody had to put a feather in their cap after this one, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
Now, what did you think about the choices made in the portrayal of the Green Goblin?
When Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin, he kind of becomes that creepy old guy at the bar who buys drinks for the younger folks so that he can pretend he has friends. He starts becoming this dad joke slinging huckster, and he's talking directly to the audience and making horrible puns. Like he comes out, and the first thing he says is he jokes about needing a good dermatologist, and he's so muscular because he uses shake weights, and this is supposed to inspire laughs from the audience. Instead, I groaned I groaned so hard. And then we're treated to a supervillain makeover. Tom, go, this is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's up there.
He brings out the Sinister Six. He makes his own Sinister Six. And who is in this Sinister Six? Oh, we've got fucking Swarm. Yeah. Do you know who Swarm is? It's a humanoid swarm of bees. And in this version, he looks so much fucking dumber than the comics version, who already looks so fucking dumb. We also have Electro. Oh, that's cool. We also have a dinosaur costume you can buy at Spirit Halloween anytime you want. Supposed to be the lizard.
That's Kurt Connors.
Yeah, it is. We have Kraven the Hunter, who looks like an exaggerated John Romita drawing brought to life. We have Carnage, who actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
And then we have Swiss Miss. Yes, I said that, Swiss Miss. No, Spider-Man is not being attacked by a delicious hot cocoa mix. This is a lady with propellers on her nipples. Tom, go, did you see these propellers on her nipples? They were there. This is a real character created for the play, strictly for the play. Somebody's like, we should create a character. Spider-Man has a rich 60-year history of all these supervillains. One of the greatest rogues galleries in all comics, second only, arguably, to Batman. But hey, let's create a new character. Okay, that's cool. What do you got? I don't know, a chick with propellers on her nipples and sharp pointing things all over her body. How about that? We'll call her Swiss Miss. Are you out of your mind?
How pissed off do you think the Swiss people were at that?
They were probably pissed they didn't get any sort of royalties.
Well, not only that, but, no respect. Normally, they're very docile people, but I could see them downright throwing a tiff.
I would throw a tiff over this, that's for sure. By the way, somebody thought they were real fucking clever by naming her Swiss Miss, too. That's what really irks me. Somebody was laughing so hard, and everyone signed off on it. Shut up, you're stupid.
Well, that and just a lot of the choices don't make any sense. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to have some muscular dude come in to play Bonesaw McGraw. Instead, they have a giant inflatable blow-up doll.
Thank you. That was my other really glaringly, obviously stupid thing that I'm like, who thought that was funny? Spider-Man, typical Spider-Man origin. Sort of the origin. They play fast and loose with it. But he wants to buy a motorcycle so he can get the girl. And so he becomes a wrestler, wrestles Bonesaw McGraw. Oh, yeah. And instead, it's this giant inflatable stupid thing.
And they aren't even trying to hide the person holding it up.
Nope. The person holding it up is visibly swinging the inflatable's fists and whatnot. So ridiculous.
Visibly embarrassed.
Yeah, as you should be, sir. As you should be. Oh, you made your Broadway debut? What'd you play? Well, I held a giant inflatable toy. Oh.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Maybe you need to look into a different career, young man.
Boy, Mom and Dad sure are glad they sent you to Juilliard, aren't they?
How highly do you have to spin that tail at Thanksgiving dinner? How many embellishments do you have to take?
As long as we're on the subject of things that are incredibly stupid, Norman Osborn is trying to save the world by mutating humans in order to anticipate global disasters as a result of the greenhouse effect.
As you do.
One of his ideas was to mutate our eyes to include infrared.
Yeah.
Why don't you just get infrared goggles?
Well, that's no fun.
Well, wouldn't it be easier and a lot more practical?
Well, I mean, he turned a man into a swarm of bees.
Yes, and then he also turned himself into a, cross between Liberace and a southern plantation owner.
Yes. Thank you, Tomko. That's a reference I was trying to find, but I couldn't latch on to what he reminded me of, and that's it. He reminds me of Foghorn Leghorn in his delivery.
Foghorn Leghorn and Liberace.
Yeah.
This is the guy's portrayal of the Green Goblin.
Yeah, it's really an interesting choice. I understand the theater crowd is not the same blockbuster movie and or comic book crowd, but you got to figure there's going to be a high amount of crossover coming to see this thing. So the choices they made is really just, don't get it.
And again, I hate to do this with another episode, but there's not a lot of good to say about this, and there's not really a lot to say. It's because the runtime is just these inane songs.
Yeah, and the inane songs are just that. They're inane. They just seem like filler. None of them stand out to me as like a great moment. Other than the two that I mentioned that sound like U2 songs. The rest of them,
I wouldn't even say those are great moments as much as they're just kind of catchy pop songs.
Yeah, that's fair. The rest of them are utterly forgettable. Like, I was watching this, I was listening to it, but my mind was just drifting off. I was not caught in any sort of emotion.
No.
And I've seen some Broadway performances where I'm just wrapped with attention because the person performing it is so good and the song is really good. And there was none of that in this for me.
Honestly, it kind of reminds me of a Transformers movie.
Okay.
You don't go to a Transformers movie expecting amazing screenwriting or world-changing acting. You don't go to see them philosophize on the condition of humanity. You go to watch the big explosions caused by the giant robots.
Yeah.
Turn your brain off.
You go there for fun, and this is not fun.
I think that's what they were aiming for, but they fell flat on their face and broke every bone in their body as a result of a high wire accident.
That's funny because the movie, I did it again. The production literally ends with a splat, a cartoon splat.
Yes.
And boy, if that's not ironic, I don't know what is.
I don't know. The only other thing I can think of to really add to this is, why did everybody in the Daily Bugle look like they stepped out of a Max Fleischer Superman cartoon when it was supposed to be set in modern times?
Yeah, it was really interesting how, like, some of the backgrounds too were very detailed, like it was straight out of a comic book panel.
Yeah, but some of them where they're trying to make it look like it's being shown in a Dutch angle just doesn't work.
No.
The one that I'm thinking of in particular was the part where Peter's walking around with his camera.
Yeah.
And he has it slung over his side, and that's kind of passable. But then he's picking it up and trying to use it as an actual camera, and you see that it's just a piece of cardboard. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you go out of your way to break an already shaky illusion?
Yeah, I agree. It was just hamstrung before it could even become a real work of, I don't know. It was doomed to fail from the start. Too many moving pieces. And
the thing is, I think that you could make a good Broadway play out of this. I think you need to go through and completely retool the script. You need to get rid of between 50 and 65% of the music. You need to get rid of pretty much all of the extra villains except for the Goblin, and maybe tone down the humor a bit. I don't know, but I think it's possible to do a good Broadway version of a superhero story.
Yeah, I certainly think it's possible too, with the right people and the right dedication and maybe a little bit lower expectations, I guess.
Yeah. Now that you kind of clued me in on the director's resume, I could see why everybody thought that this was going to be a surefire hit.
Yeah, she definitely had a pedigree of success and had the bank account to prove it. Same with you too. There's no reason it should have been. Sometimes these things just don't work out. Ben Brantley, who wrote a review of this in the New York Times, saw a performance of this, and he wrote this in his column. Quote, Patrick Page, who plays the Goblin, ad-libbed a warning to Reeve Carney, who stars as Spider-Man, who had been awkwardly marking time by pretending to drink champagne. You got to be careful, Mr. Page said. You're going to fly over the heads of the audience, you know. I hear they dropped a few of them. Roar went the audience like a herd of starved, listless lions, roused into animation by the arrival of feeding time. Everyone, it seemed, understood Mr. Page's reference to the injuries that have been incurred by cast and crew members during the long and officially still far from over preview period for the $65 million musical. Permission to laugh had been granted, and a bond had temporarily been forged between a previously baffled audience and the beleaguered souls on stage. All subsequent performances of Spider-Man should include at least one such moment, actively letting theatergoers in on the national joke that this problem-plagued show has become helps make them believe that they have a reason to be there. This production should play up regularly and resonantly the promise that things could go wrong, because only when things go wrong in this production does it feel remotely right.
Wow, and people say I'm cynical.
Yes. Yeah.
He's literally saying the only reason to go see this
is to see the train wreck.
Somebody gets seriously hurt.
Yeah.
That's kind of fucked.
It's kind of fucked, yeah. Yeah, it's there for the popcorn effect of seeing some sort of calamity, I guess.
You know what? I guess if that's your thing, I don't think I want to watch the Broadway version of a snuff film, though.
Sure. Glenn Berger, who I said before was the co-writer, and he wrote the book, and he seems to be taking the defeat with, I don't know, as well as anyone could. He said, we grew up attending lectures, listening to people lay out all these amazing, noble stories of how the chips were down and failure seemed inevitable, but at the last moment, they achieved success. The moral is that if you never give up and believe in yourself, you will ultimately find success. No one ever comes to a classroom and says, I never gave up and I'm still a huge failure. You don't get these less inspirational tales because no one's going to invite that guy to come speak at a high school graduation, which is a shame because it's maybe a better lesson to learn. Makes you begin to revise one's whole attitude towards how to measure a life. Maybe you can't measure it by what you achieve, but rather what you attempt. It's easy to get pretty philosophical about a Broadway flop.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, this was just not entertaining.
No, and I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man's my favorite character in pop culture. And I didn't want to watch it. I just didn't. It seemed like a chore. And nothing.
It did. And I have to admit, I was very tempted to start fast forwarding through the songs, but I was afraid that one of them might actually have something to do with the plot. And I was sadly mistaken.
You were so sadly mistaken. Yeah, this was a chore. And I read the Clone Saga in the 90s, folks. Haha.
Yeah?
And I got through that, but I could not get through this. Epic fail. Epic fail.
You're welcome, listeners.
You're welcome. But that's what we do here. We watch the little seen, underappreciated gems. Some of them are gems. Some of them are actually turds in disguise. Yeah. Tomko, tell the folks where they can find you on this World Wide Web, because I think, no pun intended with the World Wide Web there, I think we wrapped this up pretty succinctly, right?
I believe we did, good sir.
Oh,
you can find me on reruns of a little show called Jake and Tom Conquer the World. I'm still paying the server charge. You can still listen to them, folks.
Excellent.
If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at The Drunken Dork and on Facebook at a little place called Jake and Tom Conquer the Group. Randall, what about you, though?
Well, that's great because I never caught Three's Company on the first run, so
Exactly.
I only caught it on the reruns, so I can't.
It's new to you.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about your sexual misadventures and wacky misunderstandings on Jake and Tom Conquer the World, Tomko.
Well, it only gets better after I get rid of Mr. Roper and bring Mr. Farley in.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me on a big dumb comedy show called Miserable Retail Slave. You can find me on Twitter at mretailslave, and also on a podcast called That's a Shame, a Seinfeld rewatch joint. Next week, sir, we're doing a movie that you wanted to do, and we passed over it in favor of doing 18 hours of Halloween. It's Flight of the Navigator. Tomko, why do you want to do Flight of the Navigator?
Well, I remember when you first approached me with the idea of this movie, you wanted to just talk about a movie that you thought should have a wider audience.
Yeah.
And I have fond memories of this from my childhood. Having said that, I only saw it in the theaters.
Oh, okay.
I want to say I was 8, maybe 9
Mm-hmm.
when it came out, and I have not seen it since then.
That's fun. I also have very fond memories of this one, and I don't think I've seen it since I was a kid. So this will be a good one, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, I'm hoping it holds up because, like I said, I only remember like one line of dialogue in it, but I don't know. I really want to like this movie.
Excellent. After that, we're covering the Scream franchise, and we promise not to take 6 episodes to do it either. Just one. I think that'll work, right?
We'll make it work one way or the other. God damn it.
God damn it. After that, the world is our oyster. So if you have any suggestions or a movie we should cover, send us an email at someone's favorite movie podcast at gmail.com or hit us up on those socials. Okay? Okay.
All right.
All right. This has been someone's favorite movie. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.